This week at NASA.
Today, I'm happy to announce that the Boeing Company has selected Florida for its Commercial Crew Program Office.
A new partnership has been formed between NASA and Space Florida to occupy, use, and modify the Kennedy Space Center's Orbiter Processing Facility, OPF-3, the Space Shuttle Main Engine Processing Facility and Processing Control Center. The 15-year use permit deal is the latest step Kennedy is making in its transition from a historically government-only launch complex to a multi-user spaceport.
Kennedy and the entire Space Coast have been synonymous with NASA's historic 30-year shuttle program, as well as America's first 50 years in human spaceflight. And the agreement that we've reached today with Spaceport Florida will help set up an even brighter future.
Space Florida, the state's Aerospace Economic Development Agency, is leasing OPF-3 to the Boeing Company to manufacture and test the company's crew space transportation spacecraft. Development of the CST-100, a reusable capsule-shaped spacecraft to transport up to 7 people, or a combination of people and cargo, to space, is expected to create as many as 550 jobs along the Space Coast.
40 meters away from docking, the Progress's Core's automated rendezvous antenna has been retracted.
The Russian Progress 45 cargo ship docked to the International Space Station, delivering almost 3 tons of food, fuel, and supplies to the residents of the complex.
Capture, we have indicator mode.
Docking confirmed.
The unmanned resupply ship automatically linked up to the Pier's docking compartment on the Russian segment of the station.
And liftoff of the Soyuz booster and the Progress 45 resupply ship bound for the International Space Station.
The arrival of the spacecraft came 3 days after its launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, in a successful comeback from the failure of a similar Soyuz booster on August 24th that resulted in the loss of Progress 44. It also happened 11 years to the day after the docking of Expedition 1, when NASA astronaut Bill Shepard and Russian cosmonauts Yuri Gidzenko and Sergei Krikalev arrived at the orbiting outpost aboard a Russian Soyuz capsule, becoming the first inhabitants of the ISS. There has been an uninterrupted human presence there ever since. The Space Shuttle Atlantis crew, from left Doug Hurley, Sandy Magnus, Commander Chris Ferguson, and Rex Walheim, was welcomed to the White House by President Obama. The president was presented with the coat from STS-135, the final mission of the Space Shuttle program, by former astronaut Janet Kamandi, now Director of Flight Crew Operations at the Johnson Space Center. One of the latest recipients of the Nobel Prize for Physics is now the latest to receive one of NASA's most prestigious awards. Deputy Administrator Lori Garver joined with Maryland Senator Barbara Mikulski in presenting the agency's Exceptional Scientific Achievement Medal to Adam Rees of the Space Telescope Science Institute. The award is given for contributions to NASA's aeronautical or space exploration goals. Rees was among 3 scientists who provided evidence that the expansion of the universe is accelerating. The Shaw Prize, won by Rees 5 years ago, goes this year to NASA astrophysicist Gerald Fishman of the Marshall Space Flight Center. Fishman and another scientist share the award and $1 million cash prize for research on gamma-ray bursts, the brightest, most explosive events known to occur in the universe. Fishman, a NASA astrophysicist since 1974, is a co-investigator on the Gamma-Ray Burst Monitor, a key instrument aboard the Fermi Gamma-Ray Space Telescope. As for Fermi, it has discovered the youngest known millisecond gamma-ray pulsar in an old globular cluster of stars named NGC 6624. Millisecond pulsars are highly magnetized neutron stars that rotate every 1 to 10 milliseconds, or 1/1000th of a second. Animation shows a neutron star to scale with the island of Manhattan, and all pulsars detected by Fermi blinking at 1/50th their actual speed.
The economic impact of the Wallops Flight Facility was the topic of the day as members of the Federal Reserve Bank in Richmond toured the facility. The day included a roundtable discussion on the importance of Wallops economically to the area with 20 regional economic development leaders, and also a tour of several of the facilities at Wallops, including NASA's Sounding Rocket Facility and Range Control Center. They also received an overview on Orbital Sciences Corporation Taurus II launch vehicle that will begin carrying supplies to the International Space Station in 2012, and also the Mid-Atlantic Regional Spaceport's new pad from which the Taurus II will launch.
We were interested just because of its implications for the economy. You guys are doing great things. Innovation is the key to growth in our standard of living over time, but you're doing great things for the country as well. So keep up the good work.
NASA couldn't achieve the big things that we do were it not for small business.
Administrator Charlie Bolden led the list of speakers at NASA's 4th Annual Small Business Symposium and Award Ceremony.
Small Business Subcontractor of the Year.
The two-day event once again helped inform company executives and employment specialists about opportunities the agency provides for small businesses in exploration and science missions, as well as other programs.
It's really a new chapter. And one of the things that's going to fuel that chapter, as you know, is innovation and our entrepreneurs.
The 4th Annual Wernher von Braun Memorial Symposium featured several NASA speakers providing updates on the Marshall Space Flight Center and various agency missions and programs. The 3-day event, held at the University of Alabama Huntsville, also hosted panel discussions on a wide range of topics, including NASA's exploration roadmap, energizing commercial space, integrating robotic and human exploration, and national space policy. The Von Braun Symposium is organized by the American Astronautical Society in conjunction with UAA Huntsville, the Huntsville National Space Club, and the Marshall Space Flight Center.
Today, we're going to recognize some of our extraordinary colleagues. I want to thank all of you for your outstanding efforts over the past year.
The headquarters honor award ceremony recognized employees who have made significant contributions to the headquarters community. 18 teams and individuals were so honored for their exemplary efforts over the past year.
Station Houston on 2 for Mike. Your guest is entering the room and will be calling up shortly.
Singer and musician Dusty Hill of ZZ Top toured the Johnson Space Center at the invitation of Expedition 29 Commander Mike Fossum.
Well, I'm at the end of my tour. I guess you're near the end of your tour, but I'm closer to home than you are.
Hill visited the Mission Control Center, where he spoke with Fossum and flight engineers Sergei Volkov and Satoshi Furukawa aboard the International Space Station. Astronauts Katie Coleman, Dottie Metcalf-Lindenberger, and Steve Robinson, who moonlight as amateur musicians for the band Max Q, showed Hill where astronauts train and engineers are developing the next generation of NASA spacecraft.
In the early days of soaring, gliders used to look like this. A reproduction of a Wright glider once tested in the full-scale tunnel at NASA's Langley Research Center. Then along came a Langley researcher in the 1940s and 50s, Francis Rogallo, and the Rogallo wing. The so-called father of hang gliding's design can be seen in the skies today, piloted by soaring enthusiasts and wowing spectators. Many of the faithful commemorated a century of soaring on North Carolina's Outer Banks, where on October 24th in 1911, Orville Wright made an historic 9-minute and 45-second glider flight. The goal of Soaring 100 was to celebrate that birth of modern soaring. At the Wright Brothers Memorial, NASA Langley technicians demonstrated how the science of flight has changed.
One of the things on the Harrier is that the vectored engines, they would turn them, the same thing as the Osprey, is they would turn the engines and vector the thrusting to give it this takeoff and landing. And it's doing the same thing with this, you know, it turns and varies its thrust as it does on the Osprey also.
Nearby at Jockey's Ridge State Park, an exhibit from NASA's Johnson Space Center helped visitors soar far above the clouds and into space. They even had a chance to feel a piece of the moon.
You know, you touch the Earth rocks all the time and you don't think much about it. And then you touch something that comes from outer space. That's pretty neat.
Another Soaring 100 attraction that participants found pretty neat? A man dressed up as one of the Tusken Raiders from the movie Star Wars.
And that's This Week at NASA. For more on these and other stories, log on to www.nasa.gov.